thanks everybody for joining us. This is the second time that we've done this, and we're planning to do these feature release webinars after each of our major releases. My name is Steele Wagstaff. I'm the Educational Client Manager at Pressbooks, and my co-presenter today is Taylor McGrath. Taylor, you want to say hello?
Hi, I am the lead technical support for Pressbooks. You probably hear from me if you've ever sent us in a ticket.
Thanks, Taylor. The other person who's on the call from Pressbooks that's going to be monitoring the chat is our colleague Liz Mays, who almost all of you know as well. Hi, Liz.
Hi.
So in these webinars, our kind of big primary goal is to show all of our users features that we have released in the last, whatever time it was between the last major release and the most recent release. Our most recent release was Pressbooks 5.7. We also released some updates to the theme and to a few other things, but I'm just going to call it Pressbooks 5.7 for now. And there's a blog post that Taylor wrote recently that details a lot of the big picture changes in like a prose narrative. And if you really want to dig into the weeds, you can also view the release notes in GitHub and see all of the particular issues and things that were part of that release. In this webinar here, we're going to talk about probably half a dozen to 10 items that we think are really notable, show you how they're used, and hopefully get you excited about them. And then we're more than happy to take questions at the end about some of the features that you saw or things that you wanted to know more about. And that's our agenda. So I'll turn it over to Taylor, who's going to screen share and start us off.
Great. Okay. 1 second. All right, can everyone both see my screen and hear me? Great. Today I am going to show you first the biggest feature that we released with 5.7, which was the updates to our export page. Nope, not that one. So if you remember how it looked before, it was you had the options to export at the top, and then it would just appear as files on the left side of the screen for the most part. So we've changed this to both enhance accessibility, the design of the page, as well as some extra features. So you'll see that all of the information that you were given in the older version is still available. You see the theme that you're using. You have the ability to go and change the theme. The list of supported and other formats up there at the top, familiar. What changes is at the bottom. So now all of these exported files are going to be arrayed in a table instead of just loosely exported in batches. And that allows us to do a couple of things. First, with the accessibility, it allows people to more easily go through, tab through, delete, and download files as they need, especially people using assistive technologies or keyboard-only access. And it also gives you just the ability to see more cleanly what you're looking at and the ability to sort files. So you can sort by file name, format, size, pen status, and date. One that you wouldn't have seen before maybe was the pen status. And so what that allows you to do is save files so that they don't get deleted. In prior versions of the export page, the general rule was that the last 5 batches of your exports were saved. And then the oldest of those 5 batches would be deleted when you deleted a new set of files. So the idea of a batch is gone now. And instead of batches, you get up to 3 different separate files of each format. So say your network allows you to export 10 different file types. You can export up to 3 of each types. Ideally, like that, you can get up to 30 files, which can be, it can allow you to have more files available to you if you need. And so now that the idea of those group batches is gone, you can now like save the ones that you want to not be deleted. So say I want to save this file that was exported in 2018. I can pen it. It's the oldest of the 3 EPUBs that I have. I have the top 3. That means that one is going to delete when I export another EPUB file because I can only have 3 EPUB files. But I don't want the oldest one to leave. So if I go and I export another EPUB file and I pinned my oldest one, then it's not going to be the oldest one that deletes. It's going to be the second oldest one that deletes, and my pinned file will remain. You'll also see another feature of this is the progress bar. And I'll go ahead and export another file in just a minute to show you more about that, because that's another new feature we have. But you'll see that we still have our pinned file here. The other EPUB is gone. That was in between these two, arranged by date, and the new file appears up here. So the primary sorting for this table of files is always going to be by date, but you can sort by these other columns. So I want my pinned file to go to the top. My pinned file is now at the top, and then the rest of them are still sorted by date. So the secondary sorting mechanism for all of these columns will be by date, which can help. And then, so I'm going to export another file so we can take a closer look at this progress bar. So this, it communicates directly with the system that we use to create your files. So you're getting in-time reports of what our system is doing to create your file, and if it's taking a long time, that can help. With certain files and certain places, it'll give you like a pretty minute breakdown. We're exporting or importing chapters 1 of 71. And if it's a really long export and it's taking a while, then it might be important to know that. Maybe there's this is why it's taking so long. Transparently, this is the information that's being transferred. So that export, or that the progress bar is on the export page, and it's also appears when you are importing a file, say a docx into your book, or cloning, or the cover generator when you're generating a new cover file. The other thing that you can do now with this, the table, is you can decide how many of the entries that you want per page. A lot of times it might not be necessary, and the default is 50, so you'll just see all of those. But if you ever want to see just say 4 on your page, not have to scroll, whatever, it'll paginate those by however many you decide and the number of items per page. Okay, you can pin up to 5 files. And once you've pinned 5 files, the 6th one, you'll get a warning that only 5 files can be pinned at once. So those will stay until you've unchecked it. Another feature that's now offered on this page is that you can, excuse me, bulk delete files. So since I have these pinned, they're not available for bulk deletion. I'll go ahead and uncheck a couple, and you'll see all of the unpinned files. I can go ahead and check. Oh, I forgot to choose delete, sorry. Go here, delete, and apply. And those can all be deleted at once. And I believe that is a good run through of the export page. And do we want to take questions now or wait until the end for each feature?
I'm open to whatever. If people have questions, it's a good time to ask them about exporting since it's still fresh. You're welcome to unmute yourself or just type it in the chat if you'd rather. I'll give people time.
Great. All right, so with that, I will hand it over to Steele, and he's going to show you H5P cloning.
Okay, so if you'll forgive me, I'm going to tell a little bit of a story here because this is one that's super close to my heart. This, you'll see, is a GitHub issue that is closed, and I feel so excited to say that it's closed. Steele Wagstaff, who's the person speaking, opened this issue in November of 2017 with the organization H5P. So this is something that I've cared about and I've been working on, I guess, for about 1.5 years now. Back when I opened this issue, I was still at the University of Wisconsin, and we were trying to figure out a way that we had built these Pressbooks titles and we included these H5P interactive content pieces in them. And we were really excited about the way that they made our book more interactive and let us do all kinds of formative assessment things. But when we went to clone a book, once Pressbooks allowed books to be cloned, the H5P activities got left behind. And you'd have to manually export, import them, export, import, export, import. And we had some books where we had like 140, 160 different H5P activities in the book. And that was kind of a bummer, especially since everything was openly licensed. There was no permissions reason why we couldn't do it. There was just a technical blocker. And the technical blockers were numerous, and we worked through them. And you could see as we discussed this, people from Pressbooks are chiming in before I worked for them, being very helpful. People from H5P are discussing it. And then I got some funding to pay for this. And the University of Wisconsin-Madison paid H5P a small amount of money to add these REST API endpoints. And that was a big deal. That happened at near the end of 2018. And then it took a long time for them to work on it. And then they worked on it and then delivered it. And we had to do a bunch of testing. And then Pressbooks then had the job for themselves to do to build on this at REST. And so it took a while. But the upshot is it works. And we now support cloning of H5P activities whenever a book that has H5P activities is cloned. So here's an example. Here is a book that's on our integrations server. In that book, here's a chapter that has a bunch of different H5P activities. All the book is chapters with H5P sample activities. This book, you'll notice, has a Creative Commons license. All that we require is that the book be public and that it be clonable. So it has to have a license that allows remixing or revision. So if it has a Creative Commons license that allows cloning, then we can clone it. So what I'll do is I'll take the actual URL for this book. I'll come onto my target network. I paste the URL here. I give it a new address. I'll call it H5P clone test. And I'm going to say, testing the H5P cloning power. I don't know, that's a good title. And as Taylor was saying, we've added these new progress indicators. So anybody who's cloned a book before used to just see that little circle and you just kind of crossed your fingers and hoped at the end of a few minutes the clone was successful, and it almost always was. But now it's telling me exactly what it's doing. Right now it's cloning the front matter. And in a second it will start cloning the chapters. Hopefully this book won't take too long. It's not a lot in this book. But that's what's happening there. That's a new feature that was added in. Okay, we're getting closer to done. We're now doing the parts and chapters. And when we're finished, we're going to receive a status notification here in just a second. So finishing up, that's good. This is under a minute here. We just cloned that book, and it tells me it cloned 48 terms, pieces of front matter, chapters, and this is the magic here. It also cloned 30 H5P elements into this book. So if I'm looking at this book now on my server, on the new clones, on the target server, you'll see this book has all of the H5P activities in it. So let me actually visit the book for a second. Here's the second chapter. Well, in a second, it'll be the second chapter. Okay, so here's the example of the audio recorder activity that was in the original book. Here's the H5P chart. Here's the collage. Here's a column. And here's a multiple choice example. There's the, all of the activities that were there in the original book are now here in this book. And the important piece to note is that it didn't just produce a reference pointing back to the original book. It actually cloned the activities themselves. So that if I go back into the dashboard, this is my cloned book, and I look at the H5P content itself, you'll see here are all of the activities. The activities themselves, the source files, were copied over and can be edited. So let's say I cloned the book and I want to edit. There was a speaking the words test that was in Spanish. Let's say I'm actually teaching French in this book instead of Spanish. I have to agree to use the hub. Now I'm editing this activity, and this activity is my local version of that H5P activity. I can modify and change it and do whatever I want without affecting the target book. So cloning is actually a copy of those freely licensed H5P activities in a freely licensed book. That's something that we're really, really excited about. I think it will help people do more rapid iteration and revision and remixing. And it also means that if you take the time to add interactive components to an already open licensed work, others can then clone and improve and benefit from that without a bunch of tedious import, export kind of tasks. I saw a little bit of activity in the chat. Is there a question that would make sense for me to answer?
No, mostly just hearts.
Oh, okay, nice. Thanks, Hearts. Okay, so that's it for me on the H5P cloning. And I just feel so relieved. It was a long road, but it's really exciting for it to be on the other side of it.
All right, I'm going to move on with a little bit more on cloning, but not H5P, so it won't be as cool, I guess. So I'm on a book here that I've already cloned from another network. So the feature that I'm going to show you today is that we've changed the display of our source comparison. So if you haven't seen this before, this was something that you could enable on any cloned book by going to Appearance, Theme Options, and Web Options, and then clicking the Enable Source Comparison button. Previously, what it would show you is a big panel, and it would show you the deleted and added sections of a book that had been cloned from another network or your own network, and that the new version was different than the source. So it was an easy way to show readers what the differences in the book were and how it's been changed, and in just a really transparent way of having the record of that open educational resource. So we've gone ahead and enabled it for this book. I'm going to go ahead and show you why we've changed it. Because before, a lot of the deletions and the additions were in the same section, and they would like go back and forth. So you'd have interspersed words. And what we've modeled the new version off of is the revision history that's always been at the bottom that's baked into WordPress. So you'll see that what the revision history does is it layers it out in two different panels, the new panel and the old panel. And so the changes are more obvious that way. It's more easy to see what the differences are and read it through. So we've changed it to be the same. I'll go ahead and visit this chapter, and I've already made a change in it. So you scroll down, click Show Comparison with Original, and then you've got your additions and deletions at the top. The two different panels showing you the current version of the source book and the current version of the book that you're visiting. And it's really, really obvious what paragraphs are affected, what words are affected, and how that book has changed. And if people want to see or read the older version, that's more possible. So that's just that's a small change we've made to make that a better feature. And back to Steele with Zotero.
Thanks, Taylor. I'm going to try to share my whole screen here so it'll look a little different. And if you hear a little bit of background noise, I have an excited child who just arrived home, so you're welcome. I'm not sharing the right screen, am I? So let me try that again. Let's share the desktop. Which one? Okay. Okay. Are you seeing that? Okay, great. So what I want to show here is that what we added better metadata support for Zotero citations. So Zotero is a very popular citation management software that is open source and really awesome. I used it a ton actually when I was writing my dissertation. And what you'll do is often you'll install a standalone Zotero application that runs on your computer, and there'll be a Zotero browser plugin that lets you, if you're on a library web page or if you're on a catalog web page, you can grab the bibliographic information from a work, or if you're on an article database, it will often harvest and grab the PDF itself and add it to your library to make it easier to cite work and produce works cited and bibliographies and things like that. So we already produced really well formatted metadata and microdata for all of our books, but we needed to work with one of the Zotero translators in order so that Zotero would understand the metadata that we made so people could easily import a book. This is a really terrific book that Liz, our colleague Liz Mays, edited. A few of us that are here on the call contributed to it. And this book is in a Pressbooks network. And so what I'm going to do is I'm using my browser extension here, and I'm going to click Save to Zotero. So Zotero, if you looked at that tooltip, it says embedded metadata has access to this site. So that's a good sign. I'm going to click this button. I'm going to say, I want to save it to my Zotero library. If I want, I can give it a tag. I can say Pressbooks, and I can say Open Education. However I want to organize my citation in my library. It's going to save a snapshot of this page, and I click Done. And then I pick a different book. I had deleted this book out of Zotero after I tested it, so let's pretend like this is the book that I want to cite. Okay, I'm ready. This is the book I want to cite. I'm making a new record, Portuguese para principiantes. Okay. Snapshot. And it's here in Zotero. Okay, great. You can see it there in Zotero. It was brought in. The other thing that I can do if I want is I can download, say, the EPUB and the PDF for this book, and I could attach them to the Zotero record. So it's actually included in my Zotero library as it's synced across platforms. And Zotero will also let you index and search the full text of different books. So here I've got this record here, and I'm going to attach a stored copy of the file. I'm sorry, my computer's being taxed too heavily trying to show you my whole screen. Here's the PDF that I'm going to attach. So, okay. So here, this PDF now, this export that I made of the book has now been attached to my Zotero record. And when I want to, it's running this process here. It's going to index the full text of that PDF and make it searchable for me within Zotero. So it's a really cool way to connect for researchers who are already using Zotero and preparing bibliographies and citations. What we've done is we've added the right translators and meta and microdata so that you can bring Pressbooks published titles quickly into Zotero and produce nicely well-formatted bibliographic information for them. You can see here it's got an author, title, a publisher, a date, all the kind of information you'd expect to have in your citation was just grabbed automatically from the Pressbooks site, as long as it was entered correctly by the author. And if it wasn't, then you can just clean it up in Zotero. So sorry about my first aborted trial, but I got it in the end. And that's what I wanted to show you on Zotero. It looked like there was a chat. Maybe it's just more hearts, but it might be a question.
No questions.
Okay. Taylor, back to you.
Yeah, so I am going to show you the next iteration of our glossary tool feature. I'll go ahead and share my screen. Okay, can you see a book called Admin Textbook? Great. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and navigate to where the glossary tool lives. So under Organize, I'm going to go to Glossary Terms, and then I'm going to add a new term. So if you haven't already been introduced to this, we showed this off, this feature that we had added to Pressbooks Core on our last 5.6 webinar, as that was the big feature release we did that time. And so this is relatively new to Pressbooks. It was something that the developers at BC Campus had started working on, and then our developer Dax Chartrand had worked on integrating it into core Pressbooks. And so what we've done to improve it since then, we've worked on making the glossary tooltips look better, adding different features that you like, how you can make it look. So you can now add bold, italics, and links. Links is probably the biggest thing there that people can access through those tooltips and through the full glossary. And we've also added some additional accessibility measures for the web display and the ability to access those tooltips and close them out. So I'm going to go ahead and enter an example glossary term here. Just add some example links in bold here. And then I'm going to create this term.
Was it the Canadian Google you just added there, Taylor?
I got used to it. After a while, you can't type it any other way.
Okay.
Okay, so this is saved, and now that it's saved, it'll show up in my full glossary list. But I'm also going to go ahead and put it in a chapter. There we go. Okay, that's already been added, but we're going to pretend it hasn't been. I'll go here, choose my existing term example and insert. And save the chapter. So when we view the chapter, we'll find our example term, italics, bold, we've got a link. The link, it works. I'm going to escape to exit. And then I'll go ahead and navigate to our full glossary list as well. And you'll see that all of that appears there. And it'll appear, all of those features will also apply to the glossary list and the export formats as well. All right, that was me, and I'll stop sharing.
What I want to show next is my screen first. And what I'm going to talk about here is we just added support. We whitelisted a couple of other content sharing types that you can embed easily in your book. So iframe embeds are nice because you can put things from other websites into your website, but they're also sometimes not nice because sometimes things on other websites aren't great and aren't very secure and pose risks for stuff. So generally, we want to make sure that a source is trustworthy or permissible before we allow it to be iframed and whitelisted onto our site. And we just changed the whitelist rules and added support for both Google Maps and Google Forms. So here's an example of a map of Madison, the city that I live in, that's only very lightly dusted with snow right now. And I have a map that I want to put in my Pressbook title. So I'm going to click the share button here. I'm going to go find the embed a map code. Here's the iframe here. I'm going to copy that HTML. I'm going to come to a Pressbooks chapter. In this case, I'm going to switch over to the text editor, which lets me paste iframes directly. I'm going to paste that iframe. And then I'm going to switch back to the visual if I want to. And you'll see, oh, look, it turned it into an embed. And if I wanted to preview the chapter, I'd see, oh, look, here's my embedded Google map. And I could do things with it. I can move it around. I can zoom in. But it's an embedded Google map that was just dropped into my page. I can do the same thing with a Google form. So here's a Google form that many of you have seen recently because it's the one you used to sign up for the webinar today. If I wanted to, I could come to the send button and I could grab the iframe code here for this form. So I copy that. And then I come back to the chapter. I go back to the text editor. I make a new line, paste the iframe in there. Come back to the visual editor. It's going to just show me a little box in the normal. It will fill in a second. You can see the iframe for my form has now been dropped into the Pressbook page. And you'll see now this is a Pressbooks chapter that has a map and an embedded interactable Google form. I don't know what my email is. I'm just confused. I'm typing it. Okay. Anyway, if I'd actually typed something meaningful, I could have submitted that form. The thing that you should know about this is that this will work in any Pressbook book, and it will also work for those of you who are network managers if you'd like to put a Google map or a Google form on your network root page in some way. So some of you use the generic contact form, but you might want to have a more specific Google form that asks for different information, or you might want to put a map to your office location down in the footer to show where people can come to find you in person or something like that. These are features that are also supported at the network root level if you wanted to put something on your kind of network landing page. So those are just a couple of smaller things, but they're still pretty nice, and many people have been asking about them. This joins a pretty long list of already whitelisted material, and you can see that list in our guide that Taylor maintains.
Can I add a few comments?
Please.
So the Google Forms, they're pretty versatile as well. You can create like quiz questions in that way, and if you wanted to not just use H5P for that. There are other interactive things that you can do with Google Forms. And it's also important to remember that the permissions on the Google Forms and the Google Maps need to be set to public or whatever before those can be visible in your webbook.
Thank you. I should have mentioned both of those things. I'm glad you're here. All right, Taylor, so it's back to you again.
Great. 1 second. Okay. So can you see the dashboard for my book? Okay. So the last thing that I wanted to talk about today is that we've improved the usability of the dashboard user panel. So this is what you're seeing on the right side of the screen, where it's mostly just me and Steele in a bunch of different versions of us. But you'll notice that it's not every user is listed here, and that was a problem for some networks that had books that had a lot of subscribers. So say for instance, you have a biology textbook, and that biology textbook is being used by 3 classrooms of 200 people. So you've got 600 users on this book. The user panel isn't helpful if it's listing all 600 of those subscribers. You still want that information in Pressbooks, but having it on the dashboard doesn't help. So what we've changed it to now is that you can see every other role on this user panel. All administrators, all editors, contributors, and authors will still be listed there in their role. But it will just say the number of each role, and then we'll only list the number of subscribers at the bottom so that doesn't become overwhelming. And then if you do need to see that list, you can go to the user page from the side or from that panel, the organize button, and see that the subscriber is still listed there. Okay, and then Steele has the last thing we're going to show you today.
Thanks, Taylor. The last couple things are fairly simple, and they're only relevant for network managers, but they're things that many of you on this call are network managers, so this will be of interest to you. If you're a network manager, you have this network admin dashboard that's available to you. And in the network admin dashboard, we added self-service Google Analytics. This was always available previously, but before people had to email us the ID and we would paste it in there for you. That was an unnecessary step, and we didn't need to intermediate. We obviously never had access to people's Google Analytics dashboards, nor should we. That's not our business. But instead of us having to paste this code in for you, network managers can just do it directly. If you'd like to use Google Analytics with your Pressbooks network, you can. We don't have a strong feeling either way. It's really up to you. You would just create a Google Analytics dashboard. You'd receive one of these tracking numbers or analytics IDs, and then you paste it here and save it, and then Google Analytics will begin working with your Pressbooks network. Some people find that helpful in terms of providing reports back to administrators for how visited various books or their overall site is. Another change that we made just recently, eCampus Ontario supported this one, but we were providing generic information about book downloads. So every time someone went to a book and downloaded the PDF or the EPUB, that information is being sent to Google Analytics, but it was just telling Google Analytics that EPUB or PDF was downloaded. We added a little snippet that will now say the title of the book and the file format downloaded. So this is helpful if you have like 200 books with downloads available. You can now say, oh, Liz's book, Guide to Making Open Textbooks for Students, was downloaded 600 times, and Taylor's book was downloaded 150 times. That information is now in the Google Analytics statement where it wasn't before. The other thing that we changed that will be probably of interest for you, that are those of you that have kind of specific feelings about themes, is under this white label settings, you could always set a terms of service page before, which some people do and most people don't, but you can now set a default book theme for your network. This means that you pick whichever theme you want new books to be created using. It won't override or change any existing books on your network, but it just sets a default value so that the next time you create a new book and every new book created thereafter will use the default theme. We know that we have lots of, like there's some networks that are like, we run a publishing shop and we want all of our books to look the same, and we love the Leonard theme or whatever. So now that network manager could just set the default to Leonard, and all new books would have that theme when they were created. So that's available to network managers there too. Once a book is created, it has a default theme. That theme can be altered and changed. This doesn't impact that at all. It just sets a default when new books are created. And that is the Whirlwind Tour